Okay, I think I got it right on the first try. So you all can see my title page, right? That says the perfect customer journey, right? Okay. And just so you look, I am not great at seeing you all. So if something is amiss, please let me know. That would be super helpful. I usually ask that people show me their cameras, so I feel like I'm talking less to myself, but honestly, I've been creating a course over the last like 2 weeks, and I've been talking to myself for like days. And so I'm pretty sure at this point my neighbors think I'm cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. But it's all good, I mean, it keeps the expectations, right in check. Alrighty, so in this conversation today, what we're going to be talking about is specifically how to drive more customers into your business, ensuring that leads, sales, and opportunities are not slipping through the cracks. And while that's happening, also talking about how do we increase the value of the existing clients and customers that you have today. I will say also, I use customer and client interchangeably. So, please, I hope that that is okay in terms of being able to adapt and fill in the blanks for you and yourself and your business. And I don't know why I do that. I just, it's just habit. So in terms of what we're actually talking about today, we're specifically going to be peeling back the layers of your business so that we can better understand where opportunities lie. I like to think of them as hidden opportunities. Where are the opportunities in your business that you may be missing out on opportunities for closing more sales, being of greater service to your existing clients, and having those people help refer business to you and drive sales for you. And then as a part of that, we'll be talking specifically about what you can do to ensure that your business is thriving. So before we talk about a thriving business, I want to talk specifically about what it typically means when we say that there are probably more than half of businesses out there today that are what we call survival mode. So when you're thinking about your own business and where things are at in terms of your own business growth and progress, I want you to ask yourself whether or not these things apply to you, that you're constantly in the process of chasing the next deal or the next sale, that your existing marketing strategy is disjointed, or maybe even that your marketing itself doesn't exist, that you don't have a cohesive plan as to exactly how you're going to market your business and that the strategy that you're using or implementing is effective. So ponder, since I can't see most of you, is any of that applicable to you? Because these are what we would call the symptoms of a business in survival mode. So in that idea of businesses that are just surviving, I would imagine that you've heard that statistic about less than 50% of all small businesses make it to their 5-year mark. It is actually less than 10% that make it to their 10-year mark. One of the missions or our mission at Automation on a Mission is to reduce the number of small businesses that don't make it to their 5-year mark. And our promise is to work to create opportunities to make entrepreneurship easier for you. But in order for us to do that, it's important to understand what is some of the key components that prevent businesses from thriving and staying stuck in that survival mode. So tell me if this looks familiar to you, because this is typical survival marketing. So you start by generating interest in your business. You get a few leads. You sell to those hot leads. You sigh in relief. Oh my God, thank God I got a sale. And then you start all over again. Does that look familiar? Does that feel familiar to anybody? Can I get a hallelujah? Anywhere?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, because I can see you. I'm just going to stare at Tom and Karen. Thank you, Karen. Appreciate it. So in survival marketing, the things that we are typically suffering from as a result of that kind of strategy is lost traffic, lost leads, and lost customers. And we're going to talk specifically about where that shows up in your customer journey. But before we do, I want to introduce myself real quickly and share a little bit about, oh man, look at that, my link didn't work. I know that's actually our current logo. So sorry about that. So I have my own success story. And I say that because when I started this business, I started teaching the perfect customer journey, implementing it in other people's businesses, but I myself wasn't doing it. I wasn't practicing the things that I preached to all of the clients that we worked with. So I've been in business since 2014, and when I launched this business, it was initially called Confluence Business Solutions. And in that process, I served anybody and everybody. It didn't matter who they were, as long as they were using the platforms that were in my comfort zone. I wouldn't even say it was my wheelhouse. I really wasn't picky. I was just passionate about automation, and I would work with anybody who was willing to say, yes, they wanted to work with me. And the way I found my clients was usually a very expensive process, and it was high risk because the clients that I worked with were pretty much always in this place of their business was on fire and things were burning down, and they were in a constant state of crisis. And so for me, it was a very reactive process of building my own business, and it was a lot of stop and fix for the clients that we were working with. It was very draining, very exhausting, and also very difficult to scale. So let's talk a little bit about why some businesses thrive. So to do that, I'm going to use this lovely example of a caveman versus that cute little farmer. Now, when I put this slide together, I'll be honest with you, it was the previous chapter of our life, and we were actually doing our own farm and homestead. And so this felt so applicable to me, because the difference between the caveman and the farmer is the caveman would wake up in the morning and his tummy would be grumbling and he'd say, I'm hungry and I'm going to go out and find me some food. And so he'd go and he'd hunt for his prey, knock it on the head, drag it back to his camp, and feed himself and his family for a day. Whereas the farmer, when we think about how farming is it is about, building systems and processes by which you can farm year round, and you can grow and maintain your food supply year round by thinking about that whole picture. And so the difference between survival and thriving marketing could be as simple as comparing the caveman who wakes up and only thinks about what he needs to eat today, and the farmer who's thinking about what do I want to eat and how do I feed my family for a lifetime. So that's the kind of business we want to create. We want a business that's going to feed us and our family for a lifetime. So in that process, we are talking about building out that perfect customer journey. But before we talk specifically about what that looks like, I want you to be thinking about these two important factors that make a difference in terms of how we think about our sales and our marketing strategy. So number one, prospects are people. And we ourselves, when we sit down to write our emails and to build our newsletter and to put our sales page together, it's really easy to forget that we also are consumers. And so if we are trying to put ourselves in the positions or in the shoes of our customers, it makes things a whole lot easier. So we want to make sure that as we're building our content, as we're creating our customer journey, that we remember what it's like to be on the other side of the equation. The second thing I want to mention is that systems scale relationships. And I want to go back to my farm analogy real briefly. So in that brief chapter of our world where we had a homestead, when we bought this hunk of land, my wife spent our first entire summer trying to talk me into buying a tractor. We had 25 acres. And it wasn't a homestead. It was a bunch of overgrown stuff, and with some sweat equity, we turned it into something amazing. But she spent months trying to convince me to buy a tractor, a $20,000 tractor that I was just like, we don't need a tractor. We're not farmers yet. And in my mind, I kept thinking, if when we become farmers, then we buy a tractor. And finally, she wore me down. And she was totally right, because what happened was we bought the tractor before I thought we needed the tractor, and we were able to get things done in such a more expeditious route. I don't know if that's the right word. You know what I'm saying, right? We were able to do more because we were able to have this tool that, while it felt early in the story, early in the game, allowed us to move forward and propel ourselves and our homestead dream that much further and that much faster. Why am I telling you about a tractor? Because when you think about where you are in your business today, one of the most common things we hear, whether you call it an objection or somebody's rationale, is I'll get started with automation when, or my business is too small for, because I don't make X number of dollars. I don't have X number of clients. And what I want to tell you, I want to plant the seed today around this idea that having the right systems is what's going to allow you to scale. It's what's going to allow you to build the relationships with all the people that are coming into your ecosystem. So if you are open to the possibility that systems can help you move your business forward more effectively and more efficiently, then we're on the same page. Sound good? Yay, yay, yes, thumbs up? Okay, great. So I'm asking you to be open to the possibility that what we are doing and discussing today applies to you. Even as we move into the next several days, as we talk about our automations, what we're talking about, regardless as to where you are in your own business journey, applies to you. So let's talk about that perfect customer journey. I like to keep the customer journey into these 3 buckets. And in those 3 buckets, we're going to break down our customer journey into 9 different steps. So our buckets are the attract bucket, the sell bucket, and the wow bucket. So in our attract stage, we have the target, attracting interest. That's a lot of animation. I thought I got rid of it. Collecting leads, educating our list and our audience, making an offer, closing our sale, delivering on our promises, offering more value, and getting referrals. And if you guys ever have any questions, please don't hesitate to put them in the chat. I'll keep that open as well. So let's start talking about our, did I get it? I might have gone backwards by accident. Let's start talking about our target stage. So when we talk about our target stage, what that means is really being clear and understanding who your target customer is. Who is your ideal client? Now, one of the most common things that we hear, and it doesn't matter how mature or new and fresh a business is, it is very common that we hear people try to say, I serve everyone, or I don't want to narrow my audience. But when you do have that sort of strategy or approach, it's very difficult to be able to create content or talk to a specific person. And when your messaging isn't speaking specifically to them, it's not speaking to anyone. So when we know who our ideal client is, who our target customer is, and that's things like knowing and understanding things like their basic characteristics, their pains and their problems, and we're going to revisit that in just a second. What are the benefits they're seeking? Why are they going to buy from you? What are their common objections? And then also like the value of knowing who don't you serve. So one of the things that I hear a lot, because we work with a lot of life coaches, is I work with people who are stuck. And let's just use that as an example. I work with people who are stuck. Now, you may be a woman, let's say, for example, who's stuck in your career, and you may be a woman who's stuck with small children at home, feeling like you have no sense of purpose. Now, both of these 2 women are stuck, but they're stuck for very different reasons. And so when you say, I just work with women who are stuck, can you see how sending or writing to them can be very different when you understand specifically why they're stuck? Because the mom with young children is not going to resonate with, let's talk about your corporate job, and vice versa. So understanding and really getting specific about who you serve can make a huge difference on the impact of the things that you talk about as you nurture your audience, as you sell to your audience, as you build web pages and sales pages and landing pages for those specific people. So let's talk about the attract stage. So in the attract stage, we're talking about knowing exactly how to invite those people into our community. The survival marketer or the caveman wakes up in the morning and says, I'm hungry, I'm going to go find me a new client. Whereas the farmer says, I don't have the time for that. I want to do more thinking big picture. So I'm going to know who I serve. And because I know who I serve, I also know what their interests, their likes, their dislikes, and how to be of service to them. I can create an enticing offer that brings them to me. That's what a lead magnet's job is. It's not just collecting names and emails. It's specifically about offering something of value that's going to resonate with your ideal client. So we spend a lot of time talking about the ideal client. I feel like so many people do, but there's oftentimes a disconnect about exactly what do you do with that information and why does it matter so much. So our lead magnet Examples like a checklist, a workbook. This challenge is a lead magnet, hosting a webinar, creating an infographic. This list can go on and on and on. And what works for your audience is not going to be the same as what works for mine. I'd even go so far as to say that what works for you in January may not work for you in December. So knowing exactly what's giving you traction, what's helping you be successful is going to help you draw those people into your world versus having you have to constantly be going out and pounding the pavement looking for the latest sale to bonk over the head with your club and drag back to your cave. So when you think about your lead magnet, we're focusing on the value that you can provide to your ideal client that's of equal value to the information that you're collecting. And then the last thing I want to say on this topic is, and I put it in nice red letters here, is that a newsletter is not a lead magnet. And I want you to think about the last time you were laying on a couch going, oh my gosh, if I could just sign up for one more newsletter, I know my life would be complete. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't mean that a newsletter isn't valuable. It just means that as you're thinking about ways to drive people to you, this is an added benefit. It's not the thing that's going to get people to take an action. All right. So I want to give you another example. And we'll talk about Jenna again later on as well. But here is a client of ours that when she came to us, she didn't have a really clear idea about effective lead attraction strategies, and she wasn't really clear on who she was working with. And so when we started working with Jenna, one of the first things that we did was walk her through the process of getting clear on who her ideal client is. And then the second thing was helping her identify lead magnets that were going to draw those people to her business. Now, she created 2 different lead magnets because she was serving 2 different audiences. One of those being that motivational card series that proved to be very effective with one particular audience, and a workbook for health and wellness for women dealing with burnout as a second one. And so both of these things, instead of her constantly going out and, one person at a time, she could share this in her various networks and the places where people that were her ideal clients were hanging out, and it drove those people to her. So I want you to think for your own self, how many more visitors could you attract if you had the right lead magnets in your business? Just think about that. Do you have the right lead magnets? So next, let's talk about the collecting leads. So I mentioned this idea about having a lead magnet that's of equal value to the content or the information that you're capturing. I like to think about those leads, that information, as currency. So your lead magnet can measure it to your name, your email, your phone number, et cetera, et cetera. But what matters then is, what do you do with that information? A couple years ago, I went to an expo, and I talked to probably 200-300 different people. And in that process, they were all small business owners at various stages of business maturity, and about 80% of them did not have a CRM. So a CRM is going to help you capture that name, capture that email. And as you're learning new information about your ideal client, using that information in meaningful ways to communicate more effectively, to make sure that you're sharing content that's of interest and relevant to them, to help and aid you in the sales process. So when we talk about collecting leads, it's not just about the ability to grab somebody's name, email, add it to a Google sheet. It's about having something, a system and a process by which you can then do something meaningful with that information. Collecting names and emails doesn't do you any good if you have no way of taking action on that. So I want you to think about where leads might be slipping through your cracks. And this is what I talked about when I said hidden opportunities. So when we think about hidden opportunities that exist at this attract stage, it's around places where leads may not be getting the maximum opportunity or maximum experience. So for example, web traffic that leaves your site. So if you don't have an enticing offer that speaks to your ideal client, will they go there, look at your stuff and go, I have no idea what to do, and leave? Will they fill out a form that doesn't actually fire? Or even worse, you give them the resource, but nothing happens afterwards. We like to call that the cliff of despair. They make a phone call and it's your personal cell phone, and so nothing happens because you're having dinner with your family and you get to clock out from time to time and enjoy other things besides your business. You go to networking events and you don't have a mechanism for following up. You go to an event and you host a table, but you have no way of drawing people in to talk to you, and you have no way of capturing that information. These are different places in the attract stage where leads may be slipping through the cracks for you. Can you think about, or can you look at this and see any places in your business where this may exist? So what difference could it make if you had a complete system that both attracts the leads, takes care of the delivery, and also stores that information in a meaningful way that you can take action? So I mentioned in the beginning, I introduced myself very briefly, and I talked about, my own not doing a very good job of, drinking my own Kool-Aid. So let me share the other side of it. So I lost a big client. They were about 60% of my income. And it was one of those, like, one day everything was good. And the next day they decided that they needed to cut their budget. And I was on the cutting side. And it was a big bummer. And the reality was it had become effective, very clear to me that I wasn't building a business that was sustainable. And so rather than continue that same cycle, I decided to take my own advice. I decided to stop preaching one thing and doing another. And I literally sat down with the same resource that I share with you all today of filling out my client avatar, and then knowing exactly what that process needed to look like by which I started to attract those clients, and then writing specifically to those people. So I walked my own talk in the process of, unfortunately, learning the hard way. And I started using the systems that I had been teaching for essentially for years. And also, by the way, I've been paying for it since day one. So I understand the experience of, like, this stuff isn't always easy. And at a certain point, I just sort of got tired of being on the rat race. So as we move into the sell stage, next we come into the education. And so one of the common things that people do is they go from, here's my lead magnet, or hi, my name is Christy, to will you marry me, which is buy my stuff. And the reality is, we don't buy from machines, we don't buy from websites, we don't buy from computers, we buy from people. And we only buy from people. And if you've ever attended any sales and marketing webinar, you've probably heard the whole, we buy from people we know, like, and trust. And the way that we build that know, like, and trust is the education stage of our customer journey. And I'm a little bit of a nerd, so I love me some numbers. And let me share these numbers for you. So the average salesperson, 48%, only follow up with a prospect 2 times. And that 2 times gives you about a 2% chance of closing a sale. Right now in 2024, it's upwards of 17 to 22 and more touches. And when we say touches, what we mean is email, text messages, phone calls, carrier pigeon, webinars, you name it, ways that social media content, all of those things are your touches. But if you go from, let me deliver my lead magnet, to now, here's my $10,000 program, the likelihood of you closing is slim to none. If you double the number of touches to 4, you're still only increasing your close rate by 1%. But if you have a follow-up system that has 20 touches, it increases your odds of closing a sale up to 81%. But the majority of people are substantially lower. So this is why we talk about automation. That's the sort of the secret sauce. Is the reality is we don't have the capacity to follow up manually over and over and over again. If all we can do is 2, then yeah, manual is great. But if we really want that long-term follow-up, we have to build automation. What you got, Karen?
I'm just curious. I have 2 people, both of whom I hold in very high regard. I respect what they do. And both of them, I get sometimes 3 emails a week.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even look at them anymore. I mean, it's just way too many. And I get the impression that a lot of people, I believe these numbers, and yet sometimes the more you see from somebody, the less impact it has.
That's a great point. So the reality is, like, the other side of this, and this can be a whole separate training, is, and thank you for asking that or bringing that up, is engagement is not just about the number of touches, but also about the value of the touches and who are you talking to? So at a certain point, people are going to time out. They're going to disengage from your content. So at some point you disengage from that person's content. You see their emails, but you no longer care about what they have to say. And for that, they owe it to you to pay attention to not just, who's buying, but who's not really engaging with the content anymore. And then with that, giving them an opportunity to either re-engage or remove them from the list, because eventually that does hurt your sending reputation, your email reputation. But the other side of it is, if you're paying attention to your numbers and paying attention to your metrics, just because people are not buying today doesn't mean they won't buy tomorrow. And a perfect example that I really love talking about is the coaching program I signed up for last year. So I signed up for this guy's coach or his newsletter list in June of 2020. And I say that because, 2020 was such a pivotal year, and I remember exactly where I was when I first learned about him. And his stuff was really interesting. I didn't sign up for his program until August of last year. And I had been on his email list for 3 months or 3 years. And in that time, I engaged and disengaged and engaged and disengaged with his content. He sent me emails every single day. By the way, he still does. And every so often, he's got something that's of interest to me. So you don't, just because it doesn't matter to you today, there's something that's keeping you on that list, right? And at some point that may change for you, whether that be that you're no longer interested or that they say something that you're like, oh my God, I just gotta know, you know what I'm saying? And the other side of that is, as the business owner, is knowing and understanding when do you consider somebody no longer a viable, lead. So recognizing that, really what we're talking about here is, how do you build that education? How do you nurture your client or your prospects so that when they are ready to buy, you're there? And the idea is, we want to make sure that we build that relationship before we start trying to sell. So in terms of how we go about educating, one of the big things that we hear a lot is, I have no idea what to say. How do you follow up with somebody 20 times? You don't write 20 emails that say, I'm just following up, I'm just following up, I'm just following up. You tell stories, you share value, you answer questions. So I gave you, in the beginning of this call, the whole system scale spiel about, I'll be ready when, because that's a common objection that we hear in our conversations with people. We write it into our educational content so that we help people understand why we are so passionate about trying to get automation before people think that they're ready. Because oftentimes, by the time you think you're ready, you're playing a lot of catch up and having to juggle a lot of stuff. That's kind of information that you can share without having to be salesy, offering value, and maybe that's the thing that resonates with that person. You never know what that thing is when you're just getting to know them. So these are different things that you can be talking about so that you're educating as you're building that know, like, and trust. So how many prospects do you think you lose each month simply because they're not ready to buy today? So I want to say that thing again that I kind of glossed over. People buy when they're ready to buy, not when you're ready to sell. So nurturing happens so that when they are ready to buy, when I was ready to sign up for that guy's coaching program, I didn't have to hunt. It was already in my inbox, and I'm pretty close to the top. So he continued to offer value that kept me excited, kept me on his list. 3 years later, I was ready to rock and roll. And he didn't just sort of give up. So how does that look for you in your business? In the offer stage, we talk about now we're at that place where we've earned the right to ask them, will you marry me? And we know that we are ready to do that because we see the things that are moving in our favor. They are clicking on our links. They are reading our content. They are engaging with our social media stuff. They are reading our blog. And then knowing specifically what the right offer is at the right time. Now, we work with a lot of service-based businesses, and within those service-based businesses, we frequently see that the best route is get on a strategy call, get on a consultation, and that's essentially your call to action in your emails. You invite when the time is right, and then you make the offer that's specifically going to meet and serve those clients to the best of their abilities. So how many additional prospects do you think would buy from you each month if you had the right follow-up for the right circumstances? Next, I want to talk about the close stage. So in the close stage, what we're talking about is how easy is it for your ideal client to buy from you? So when we think about that, is it easy for somebody to go online or to engage with you in person or to talk to a salesperson? So your business might be different than your neighbors and so on and so forth. What is the process by which you go to make a frictionless experience? So when we talk about that is, I just mentioned we've got a lot of service-based clients. And in some instances, having that call with you is paramount to the success of getting that sale, because maybe you want to vet them before they say yes. Maybe you want to have a conversation about pricing or about the way the program works, and there's nothing wrong with that. And if you have a program that doesn't require a call, how easy is it for somebody to go to your website and sign up for that program? Can they do that from your website? And where are you creating sticking points in that process? So as an example, if you have a low price point program that you want to be able to sell, but you don't hold your pricing transparent, what are the odds that somebody's going to actually take an action? That's what we talk about when we think about a friction point in your sales process. So in the deliver and wow stage, we're specifically talking about what happens after the sale. So remember, in that survival marketing, what we have is that whole, I wake up, I'm hungry, I want a new client. I go out and I find one, and then I get the client, I eat my meal, and then I go back to the very beginning of attracting new clients, starting that process all over again. But the thing that I want to point out to you is that when you get that client, your job is not done. So a recent study says that one of the number one reasons why clients don't buy again is because we didn't invite the opportunity and we didn't show them value when they became a customer, they became a client. So in our world, I want you to remember that the job isn't done. Our ability to deliver on that promise lays the framework for them to continue to work with us in the future. Oops, I went backwards. So in the deliver and wow stage, I want you to be thinking about what are some 5 things that you can do to wow your clients during the first 30 days. So when somebody signs up for Automation on a Mission, for example, I want to make sure that we roll out the red carpet for them. I'm not going back to the top of the funnel. I'm focused on making sure that they feel special, that they feel like they've got all of the tools and the resources that they need to do the thing that they've signed up for. I want to make sure that the experience is good, that in our world, technology can be really overwhelming and it can be really scary. So how do I take some of that fear away? So what does that look like in your world? How can you use use automation to help that process by which you continue to deliver value, that you continue to show that your clients mean something to you now that they've spent some money with you? And then what happens after those 30 days? So how many customers do you think don't continue to engage with you simply because you didn't wow them? Simply because there was no clear pathway for which they continue to work with you? So one of the clients that we worked with several years ago had a really expensive program, human design coaching program, and she had no problems bringing people into her funnel. She did an amazing job on a multi-day training and had no problems closing sales. $15,000 program. And when they signed up, nothing happened. They got a receipt. They could participate in some live calls periodically that she would send out an email about. And then at the end of that 1 year, most of the time they didn't renew on a program that they could continue in over and over again. That was what we came into. And my feedback was, you have a high ticket program and they don't see the value from day one. And so the first thing that we did was we created a membership area where she had tons of content that she would just sort of throw at them periodically or put in a Google Drive that they could access at their leisure. And so we took all that stuff and we created a member community. And then we created an onboarding process so that when somebody signed up, it was like you just hit the jackpot, and we made them feel like the royalty that they were. They just invested a ton of money into this program, trusting that this person was going to do a great job, which they did in terms of delivery, yes. But in terms of what they felt was like, okay, I just spent a lot of money and nothing happened. And that is a fear for a lot of people, especially the first time they make a purchase with you. And then we created processes or benchmarks where her coaching team would get notified where they were in that 1 year process. What were the things that these clients were achieving? And at that 10-month mark, we started a process by which we started to warm them up to, okay, you're moving into a decision-making time. The coaches were made aware of that same thing. And so by the time it came the point for a discussion about a renewal, everyone was on the same page. The clients knew exactly where they were at in their human design journey. The coaches knew where the client was at. They weren't surprised when all of a sudden they stopped showing up or they weren't prepared to make another purchase again. And that conversation was more of an equitable discussion around what is the appropriate next step. If you're doing a great job in your business with your clients, they don't want to go somewhere else. But we need to make sure that we create the process or the path that helps them understand what does that journey look like from this point forward. And that's where we talk about offering more. So here's another client that we worked with, and this is one of my favorite stories, especially now that I am a hot tub owner. So I worked with a whole bunch of different hot tub clients, and one of the things that we heard from them was, you know, they were fun because they were a brick and mortar store. They had lots of events, but you could also order and buy stuff online. But basically, they looked at their clients or customers as somebody who came in once, made this giant purchase, and then they never heard from them again unless there was a problem, like a mechanical issue or something like that. And so, but I had the opportunity to go and visit them on site. And in addition to hot tubs and swim spas, they had walls of chemicals and smelly goods and filters and all this stuff. And I'm just like, why don't you sell that? And they said, well, because we don't hear from them after they purchase unless there's a problem. And I said, well, what kind of problems do they have? And they said, well, I mean, sometimes you have, you know, like an electrical issue or whatever, but most of the time it's cloudy water. And I'll never forget what he said. Cloudy water is a party stopper. And I was just like, well, that's really interesting that you say it that way, because, you know, what they would say was, they go to, you know, they're having a football game and people are going to come over and watch the game out of their hot tub, and they open the tub and it's cloudy and now they can't have their friends over. And the reality was they literally had the supplies at their fingertip to be able to provide this service and this value, but they did nothing afterwards. And so what we did was, from the time somebody made a purchase of a hot tub, we gave them a nurture series, a post-sale nurture series that helped them understand what the prep process looked like. Okay, so these are the things that you need to have in order. And then once the hot tub was delivered, how about we give them tips and tricks on how to get the most out of their hot tub? Did you know that you can exercise in your hot tub? Did you know that it has these health benefits? Hey, check out these extra things that you can use in your hot tub to help, you know, maximize the experience. And then we took it one step further. Most of their hot tubs had the same sort of schedule for chemical replacement, filter replacements, things like that. And we created a reminder series. So rather than have the conversation end at the sale, we continued to deliver value 6 months into hot tub ownership that helped educate them on maintenance, helped them understand how to get the most out of their hot tub, and gave them gentle reminders of when it was time to buy those chemicals and filters and things like that. And then the final step to that was creating a subscription program that made it super easy, so that rather than showing up or opening up your hot tub and finding out that you have cloudy water, how about we prevent the cloudy water from happening in the first place by making sure that you have all the things that you need before you actually need them. And the result of this was literally tens of thousands of dollars in revenue that was just being missed out on. So when we think about opportunities that are slipping through the cracks, we're talking about, how do you take a one-time client, a one-time customer, and create a customer for life? What does your process look like from the time somebody makes that initial purchase to the time where they go and say, yep, I'm in it with you for good. What's the next thing I can do with you? So when you go from that core offer to that advanced offer, when you go from that introductory offer to the next stage in working with you and taking that transformation to a new level. So how many customers do you think, or clients, should be buying from you this month but aren't, simply because you don't have the right follow-up or you don't have the right upsell? And this is something that we see a lot. So in the next stage, we're talking about getting referrals. So I want you to be thinking about the last time you specifically asked someone for a referral. So most of the time when we talk to our clients about this process, we hear a lot of resistance, a lot of hubbub and blah, 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 blah. And the reason being that sometimes people are afraid to ask for referrals. Sometimes it's about time and energy. And if you're focused on survival marketing, this isn't where your focus is and your effort is, because you're focused on generating leads from thin air. And the reality is that your lead that you generate from the top of your funnel is the most expensive and the most unpredictable. And you have to bring in a lot more of those to get one completed sale. Whereas if you have a process by which you are collecting referrals on a systematic and routine basis, your ability to close those is substantially higher, because that referral is coming from somebody who already knows, likes, trusts you, and vouches for you. So you've just closed that know, like, and trust gap by having somebody else help do the heavy lifting for you. So that's what happens when we have a referral program implemented into our business. So when we think about that insecurity or that fear around how to collect referrals, one of the things that we implement for our clients is essentially a safety net. So we have essentially 3 automations that work together. We have one that is specifically around asking people, are you happy with my service? And it's as simple as thumbs up, thumbs in the middle, thumbs down. And depending on what they say is going to determine whether or not I ask them for a testimonial and referral. And it takes them less than a second to click the button. And they can do that from their phone. They can do that from their email, from their text message, computer, doesn't matter. And then we collect that information. And if you're happy, if you say thumbs up, super smiley face, awesome, then I'm going to ask you for that referral. And I'm going to be strategic about how I ask for it. I'm going to teach you specifically what an ideal referral looks like. But if you're not happy with my service, if you're like, or wah, wah, then I know that there's something wrong in my business. And knowing that is not a bad thing. It's a good thing, in fact, because if I know that I've done something that's not hitting the mark, I can get feedback and then I can work to fix those things. So we've had a number of new clients sign up in the last week and a half, I'd say. And one of the things I've said was, give us feedback, because if there is a way to ensure that the delivery of our process can be as seamless and frictionless as possible, I'm going to do it. And the best people to tell me that are the people that are signing on for our programs. I want that constructive feedback. I want to make it right with anybody who's not. And if you are happy, then I'm going to help you help me and help your friends, your family, and your loved ones. So all of this stuff can be delivered via your emails, via your phone. And when we use automation, we're then able to do this on autopilot, which takes us to the other half of this challenge of getting referrals is I don't have time. And if our focus is on something else, like delivering on our programs, we're not focused on asking for referrals and we're not focused on asking for testimonials. But if we can build this into our perfect customer journey, it can run on autopilot. So how many referrals do you think you might lose each month simply because you don't ask? And here's another nerdy statistic for you. 91% of satisfied customers say they will refer business, but only 11% say business owners, or only 11% will do it without being asked. 91%. So I want you to think about that resource that you don't have in your home. Like we moved back to Denver after being gone for 5 years, and also we're living in a new area, and so we needed an electrician, and I needed to know the best Mexican restaurant in my hood. And there's those people that I would go to over and over again. Who's going to give me the best referral for a Mexican? Who's going to give me the best burger joint? And who's going to give me the most reputable and reliable electrician? Those are your connectors. Those are your 11%. The majority of us are not naturally thinking about, how do I grow your business? How do I make that perfect connection? But they will do it if you ask. You just have to ask. So I want you to think about 3 things from this training that you might be able to implement using automation. What are 3 things that you might have found or seen as gaps in how you are creating follow-up in your business? Is it around talking to your ideal client? Is it around making sure that your lead magnet is relevant and fits their specific wants, needs, desires, goals for transformation? Is it about how you create follow-up or how you offer your programs and services and products? Is it about creating a frictionless experience for your ideal client to buy from you? How can we make that easy for them? Maybe it's about how you deliver on that promise. What does it look like once they sign on? How do you collect your contract or your payment, or get them started on that first initial intake call, or deliver on the product or the good or the service? How do you collect testimonials and referrals? How do you get them selling for you? All right. So I want to share one last thing, and then I want to walk a little bit through automation on a mission and just give you an introduction to our tool. So I shared in the beginning about Jenna Murphy, who came to us not really being clear on who she served, and also not having a really good way of attracting leads into her business. So when she started working with us, her average marketing budget was about $500 a month. And after she signed on with Automation on a Mission, she had cut that price substantially. She wasn't really clear on exactly how many leads she was bringing in on average per month, so we had guesstimated at about 2. And when once she was launched and about 90 days in, she was able to consistently see she was bringing in about 45 leads per month. And that was specifically because she had done the work on creating her customer journey. She'd grown her list from 47 people on her subscriber list to 269, and she'd had 4 clients grow from 7 private clients and a group program of 14 clients. And she'd gone from having no mechanism for collecting referrals to getting 3 referrals simply by automating the process of asking for it. So what would it look like in your business if you were able to bring in a system that automates your entire customer journey? This is what we really care about.